Soon this important legislation will be passed into law, said Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Was he referring to the highly publicized and desperately needed $2,000 in direct payments to Americans as part of the COVID relief bill negotiations? No, ladies and gentlemen, very unfortunately, he was not. In fact, he was referring to the record $740 billion in military spending for the 2021 fiscal year under the National Defense Authorization Act, otherwise known as the NDAA bill. That seems weird, doesn't it? So in the midst of a pandemic in which, and I'm going to throw some quick numbers out at you, 8 million people have fallen into poverty since the summer. 12 million Americans have fallen behind on their rent payments by as much as $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 in some cases. 15 million Americans have lost their employer-based health insurance tied to their jobs. 26 million Americans are reporting not having had enough food to eat in the last week. That's 1 in 8 Americans, or as many as 3 to 4 times as many Americans as before the pandemic. In the midst of all that, Mitch McConnell wants you to know that Congress is focused on and working diligently on assuring that Raytheon's board of directors are going to get paid. And in fact, post haste. So it took all of 3 days. It took all of 3 days for the CEOs of the private defense contractors to get their demands for a bailout, for urgent relief met by Congress in the early stages of the latest COVID relief bill, versus 8 months since the last time working Americans who aren't wealthy got any kind of relief passed since April, when Pelosi agreed with McConnell on an expansion of the Paycheck Protection Program. So not only are the priorities weird at face value, but also the timing seems really backwards, doesn't it? It took just 3 days for the demands of the defense contractors to be met versus 8 months for working Americans who are living in dire conditions, as I mentioned. And this is something I talk about a lot, and that is the bipartisan consensus in this country with regards to austerity for the working class and basically socialism for the rich. Now, why do I say socialism for the rich? Because the defense contractors are about to get a break after they already make up the vast majority of our national budget. So what do I mean by that? So the U.S. has 400 military bases stationed around the world. You know how many bases the runner-up country has? 40. That's 10%. The U.S. has 12 or 13 aircraft carriers. You know how many the runner-up country has? 2 to 3. The reason why I want to make that clear to you is because Mitch McConnell will defend this by saying, wait a second. We got to arm ourselves. You know, we got to ramp up our military spending because our foes, our enemies overseas, they're not going to wind down. They're going to ramp up their own efforts. So this is about defense here. Well, I just pointed out to you, the U.S. has military bases stationed all around the world: Germany, South Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, etc. And nobody else is even coming close to that, bro. So you're trying to convince me that this is for defense? You know, how many years have we been in Iraq now? What is it? 17 years now? Afghanistan, what is it? 19 years? All right. We're in Syria to do what? Defend ourselves? Is that right? Does anyone really believe that the American national interest is at stake? Now, to be fair, some of those funds presumably go towards salary raises for our service members deployed overseas, and that's important. And I'm not knocking that. I think that's important. There's a place for that. But overwhelmingly, let's keep it real. This is a handout. This is corporate socialism, right? The federal government subsidizes these rich corporations overwhelmingly defense contractors in this country, and along with some other priorities like deregulation, right? Wall Street deregulation, and tax cuts for the rich, and obviously austerity for the poor. That's kind of business politics as usual in Washington. And nobody exemplifies these principles more obviously, more saliently than Mitch McConnell. I mean, it's brazen to the point where here we are. We're in a pandemic. Obviously, we've got basically we're in the throes of a new depression, and we're seeing arguments made against direct payments for Americans. Recently, from notably from a Pennsylvania Senator, Pat Toomey, who claimed, well, $2,000. I mean, come on, is that really necessary? We're already in full recovery mode. Come on now, really? The U.S. is in full recovery mode after all those stats that I just threw out there. People are going hungry, man. There is no recovery mode anywhere near. Now, maybe if in the beginning of the pandemic, the U.S. had agreed to do what other nations did, Germany, for example, nationalized payroll up to 80% of wages for full-time workers and 100% of wages for part-time workers. The UK backed up all payroll, nationalized payroll for all workers. The same thing was done in, I believe, Denmark. This has actually become very widespread around the rest of the developed world. In the U.S., however, we didn't want people to get too comfortable with the idea that the government could actually work for them, that the government could serve their interests. And I could go all day on this bipartisan project that's basically designed to instill doubt in the principle of a functional government capable of being a force for good. I could go on and on, but Mitch McConnell basically is so brazenly with this comment, I think, demonstrating that. And how did we get here? So we got here partly because Donald Trump is an idiot. Donald Trump, after 4 years as president, apparently still doesn't understand how government works. And the reason I say that is because you'll recall Donald Trump recently came out publicly vowing to deny not to sign the COVID relief bill because he felt that the $600 direct payments, which, by the way, $600, you got to remember, was the compromise, right? It was only for the valiant efforts of Senators Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley that there were any checks included at all, right? We had 98 senators that were against checks, including Mitch McConnell, and we had 2 that were on the side of 80% of Americans who indicate that in polls that they support a second round of direct payments for Americans. So, putting that aside, so Donald Trump had come out in favor of $2,000 checks and said, well, listen, I'm not going to sign this slap in the face that's offensive to working families because $600, anybody can see it, that's not enough, and we need to get them some real relief. So it was nice to see him side with Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley, who fancies himself a Republican, or fancies himself a populist Republican in the Senate. So I want to give him credit on this as well. So it was nice, and in addition to that, he vetoed that National Defense Authorization Act because he did it for the wrong reasons. He objected to some other issues, notably the provision that would have required the Pentagon to rename military stations that are named after Confederate generals. So he had his own sort of culture war issues that on which he hung his objections. But still, want to give Trump credit. He did outright veto the defense bill, and then he did basically threaten not to sign the relief bill until those direct payments to Americans were expanded to a respectable amount, which is, I think we can agree, $2,000 seems pretty respectable for a family, for 2 people. For a couple, that's what, $4,000, and And then for a family, I'm not exactly sure what for kids, what each kid would have gotten, but probably something in at least $600. So it would have been a lot of money, right? It would have been a big deal for a family of four or whatever. So give Trump credit at first, and then he got played. So how did he get played? Well, Lindsey Graham, senator, Republican, friend of Trump's, loyalist, got in Trump's ear during a round of golf, I guess at Mar-a-Lago, that, hey man, listen, I hear where you're coming from on the $2,000 payments, but you're gonna have to give us some space with this COVID relief bill. Take my word for it that there's some good stuff in here. Relax your resistance. Give it a chance. There's some good stuff in there. Sign it, and then we'll get around to what you're asking for. Now, this is a familiar play that you'll recognize from the way McConnell always plays the Democrats. So the last time that there was any kind of relief bill negotiated, which was basically some paycheck protection program stuff back in April, Mitch McConnell took that same negotiating position with Nancy Pelosi in the House when he said, hey, listen, I hear you on wanting state and local aid. So Nancy Pelosi has been, as a sidebar, asking for state and local aid because states are going bankrupt, because obviously the federal government is not backing up their wages, is not sending them any kind of monetary relief. And so consumer spending is dipping, and consumer spending is how states generate revenue. And so lack of state revenue results in public service layoffs. So in NYC, you're seeing Department of Sanitation layoffs. You're seeing garbage accruing on the streets. You're seeing talk of layoffs to a third of the mass transit workforce, the MTA. You're seeing obviously layoffs to firemen and police. So defunding the police, literally, by the way, because of that lack of sales, because people don't have money, because they're unemployed and the government is not helping them out, etc. So really important priority that Nancy Pelosi has been correct to demand, but foolish to take McConnell's word for it when McConnell back in April, when Pelosi first brought this up, said, hey, listen, I hear you on the state and local aid. I hear you want that. But can we get back to this later and just give me what I'm asking for? So that, take my word for it that we'll come back to this later. So basically disarming one party in the negotiation by getting them to foolishly surrender their leverage and convincing them. By the way, McConnell is on principle opposed to any kind of direct payments or even enhanced unemployment insurance benefits, because he and the Republican caucus in the Senate feels that, according to reporting from inside sources close to the White House, or close to Capitol Hill, I should say, that this is funding that goes towards supporting blue state lockdowns. So obviously that's flawed thinking, given that red states have to go into lockdowns too, given that they're also in a pandemic, but also given the fact that blue states, even without the aid from the federal government, have still resorted to doing citywide lockdowns. Why? Because there's a public pandemic. So of course it seems like a no-brainer, right? It's common sense. But anyway, so they're just kind of owning themselves and punishing their base, punishing blue states, citizens, as well as red states, who are, by the way, all Americans. So either way, it's flawed logic. But anyway, so he disarms Nancy Pelosi, and this is something he does all the time to get his way. Hey, listen, just take our word for it. And because the Democrats are such horrible negotiators or bad faith actors, arguably they're bad faith actors as well, corporatist shills and so forth. But either way, they're certainly not good negotiators. Nancy Pelosi fancies herself a master legislator. That's garbage. And then, predictably, Nancy Pelosi never got that. All right, so fast forward back to here we are. Lindsey Graham's playing golf, using that same play that Mitch McConnell played. Hey, man, listen, I hear you on wanting that $2,000, but can you sign this COVID relief bill that we just worked on first, and then trust that we'll hold your thing up to a vote? By the way, Bernie Sanders has been actually wielding power by actually putting pressure on McConnell by denying McConnell the unanimous consent, which is the procedure that expedites votes. on the military bill. So McConnell wants the military bill, and the leverage there in the Senate is the military bill. So Bernie Sanders has been playing ball by denying Mitch McConnell a veto override on the military bill in order to get it passed, to overcome Trump's override, by denying him the unanimous consent in order to basically drag out drag out the vote through the holiday, which is something that Mitch McConnell really hates, is not being able to break for holiday, because he hates working. They all hate working. It's a part-time job if you're a United States senator. And so, they basically they get like every other week off or something. So I'm going to keep you guys here through the holiday if you don't agree to this vote. So Bernie Sanders, I want to give him credit. He's wielding power for real in the Senate. Donald Trump fell asleep, though. Donald Trump agreed to Lindsey Graham's demand and said, yeah, all right. And then made a dumb statement in which he said, to clarify why he was signing this egregious bill that would provide only a measly $600 of direct payment relief for Americans. He had to explain himself. So he said, well, just so you guys know, I redlined some items, which what that means is that these are items that I've been assured will be fixed. And then he signed the bill, which Donald Trump, again, fails to understand even after 4 years as president. Once you sign a bill, my dude, there is no fixing. There is no amending. If you want to amend a bill, then you got to go ahead and do a separate bill to amend it. Now, I should mention AOC and Rashid Tlaib. They've been pushing their own $2,000 bill as an amendment. But my point is that's a separate bill. See, if there's something you want that's not in the bill that you just signed as the president, then you have to push for a separate bill. So Donald Trump is just lazily, clumsily assuming that, no, I redlined these items, and I got Lindsey Graham's word that there would be $2,000 checks, in addition to some other nonsense that Trump was asking for. Trump wants basically a repeal of Section 230 of the federal code, which is basically liability protection for big tech companies like Twitter and Facebook from content, from suits arising from content posted by users on their platform. So if I go on Twitter and I post something defamatory or egregious, Twitter can't be held liable. Twitter can't be sued. So he had this objection in addition to, by the way, he's doing it for the wrong reasons. It's not that he objects to the principle. It's not that he objects to that liability protection on principle so much as he just has a personal grudge against Twitter and Facebook because they've dared to occasionally fact check him during the run up to the 2020 election that he lost by pointing out his nonsense. By pointing out that the stuff he was saying regarding voter fraud and a conspiracy to defraud him of the election, etc., was false. So he has this like personal grudge that now he'd like to see them stripped of liability protection. So and then the other thing was, hey man, I also want a committee formed. I also want a commission formed to investigate my claims of widespread voter fraud that I pulled out of my ass. So basically, Donald Trump pulled out this laundry list of items that he objected to and said that he felt needed to be addressed, not realizing that, you moron, that's not how legislation works. Once you sign the bill, that's the bill. You understand that it's done. Stick a fork in it. And so now, with you having ceded that power to Mitch McConnell, who's already sucked out of you everything that he needed out of your 4 years as president. He already stacked the federal judiciary, which is the way Mitch McConnell views politics, is deferring all governance, all power, all legislative authority to the courts, the judiciary. He already obviously got 3 seats on the Supreme Court, so his legacy on the Supreme Court is set for the next 30, 40 years. He stacked, I think, something like 200 plus seats are all around the federal district courts. And then he got already his tax cut for the rich from the 2017 tax reform bill, which was his and Paul Ryan's longtime political project. The $1.5 trillion tax cut for the rich, just because they didn't need it, but you know what? Austerity for the working class, socialism for the rich. So why not? So Mitch McConnell's already gotten everything out of you that he needed. You've always been annoying as a leader with your like chaos, sowing chaos online on Twitter. And now Mitch McConnell, now that you're on the door, you've already lost the election. And Mitch McConnell probably feels, frankly, you know what? I don't need this big mouth anymore. I'm ready to move on from him. It's not like Joe Biden is going to be a problem for Mitch McConnell. Joe Biden, every single time over the last 47 years that Biden has sat down to negotiate with Mitch McConnell for anything in the Senate, Mitch McConnell knows. I always pick this guy's pockets. And it's true. Mitch McConnell, again, he wields power for real. If you negotiate with Mitch McConnell and you're not serious about wielding power, or you're just, or you're not, you're not strategic, he's going to pick your pockets. And Mitch McConnell, as long as I've been following politics, has always played everybody, be it Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, and he's doing it to Trump. And it's not the first time. He got Trump earlier this year during the primary, when there was Chris Kobach, by the way, Chris Kobach, a horrible person who was Secretary of State of Kansas, was responsible for mass disenfranchisement of voters, via implementation of rigid voter ID laws or via straight up voter purges. I think he was actively trying to purge some 20,000 voters from the voter roll. So Chris Kobach, just as a sidebar, horrible person. But was up for re-election and sort of shared a lot of Trump's economic populism. So a champion of Trump's sort of movement politics that propelled him to the presidency in 2016. Chris Kobach, again, a Trump defender, champion of the true Trump agenda. And Mitch McConnell persuaded him, stay out of it. And this guy is toxic. If this guy is the nominee, if this guy is the Republican nominee, we may as well just hand over the Senate to the Democrats. So McConnell, again, got in Trump's ear, got him to stay out of it, not endorse the candidate who he should have backed, who ostensibly was more aligned with his ideology. Well, Trump doesn't have an ideology. I think that's been made clear to us from the last 4 years. But ostensibly, at least from the 2016 movement politics that he so successfully branded himself with, then McConnell's own, then McConnell's own corporatist hack politics, and McConnell convinced him to stay out of it and basically probably cost Kobach that election. So that the way McConnell runs the Senate as majority leader is basically as an incumbent protection racket. He's not looking for any independent-minded characters like a Josh Hawley who's going to fight for $2,000 for the American people. No. Mitch McConnell is looking for, are you going to toe the party line with respect to what I'm fighting for, my political project, which is, again, tax cuts for the rich, deregulation, free trade deals, job outsourcing, and unlimited military spending. There's no room for any of that dissension. As long as you get with that program, Mitch McConnell is going to go to bat for you. And frankly, Donald Trump is a bit of a chaos agent, and he proved that again by at the last minute after the COVID relief bill, which, by the way, Trump, you moron, you should have been advocating for this early on in the negotiations. Why are you jumping in after the negotiations have already been brought to after the bill has already come to your desk and just waiting to be signed? First of all, you're just delaying benefits for a week for people who are going hungry. By the way, Trump's approval ratings have dipped in the last week. His support has gone down amongst Republicans. Democrats haven't moved, obviously, but Republicans, 46. I think it's like the first time ever that the job approval rating of an incumbent president who's outgoing, who's already lost, actually has decreased by 7%, from like 46% to 39%. Trump's job approval rating has declined over this chaos that he's sown in the last week by taking a stand, effectively stalling the relief for Americans with the COVID relief bill by not signing, and then to get nothing. Because now Mitch McConnell is making pretty clear publicly that, hey, you know what? there's very little chance that this 2000 direct payment is going to pass. I just don't see it with the votes. Josh Hawley seems to feel, I should mention, that there are 60 votes. In fact, there are some Republican senators, Marco Rubio, uh, Kelly Loeffler, and David Perdue, who are up for re-election next week in Georgia in the two races that will decide control of the Senate. Uh, and then you have there's another one from Nebraska, Deb Fisher, I believe, that have come out. So I don't know if Holly is right or wrong, but either way, McConnell is not going to bat for Trump on this. So Loeffler and Perdue, they've changed their tune because again they're up for re-election. So you can understand that. You got to remember, by the way, that those two were previously they were with McConnell. They in opposing any kind of relief checks. They were endorsing $0 in relief aid just a few weeks ago. So if it weren't for Bernie and Holly, and now they're boasting, well, it's because of me you got 600. They're trying to get reelected. But now $2,000, yeah, no, Donald Trump is the single most popular Republican politician in the country. If Donald Trump is asking for $2,000, they're calculating that that's the play that they got to make, regardless of how they really feel about $2,000. But Mitch McConnell is now tacking on poison pills, which is what's known in Washington as insanely unpopular provisions that are going to make the bill less likely to pass. So he's doing that by attaching Donald Trump's requested committee, committee into to investigate claims of widespread voter fraud, as well as the Section 230 repeal for big tech to get back at Trump's enemies in big tech and the internet. Let's keep it real. That would radically alter First Amendment rights for the internet. But he's doing that so that he can hide behind the cover of, wait a second. Even though this is a conversation being forced about a standalone bill from Democrats in the Senate, from Bernie Sanders and now Chuck Schumer and Josh Hawley. Even though we were talking about a standalone bill, no, I don't want to leave Trump's other requests out to dry. So I'm going to include these other items that are going to prove insanely popular with Democrats. I mean, right? Why would Democrats have any desire to agree to after Joe Biden got 81 million votes to form an exploratory committee into looking into how that happened, how that was possible? It doesn't make any sense. So obviously Democrats are going to object on principle. And the Section 230 thing, I mean, Democrats, some of their largest donors are tech valley giants, Silicon Valley. So obviously this is a non-starter for Democrats, which is why McConnell's doing it. But he's also able to hide behind the cloak of, oh no, but this is what the president wanted. This is what Donald Trump asked for. So he can credibly plead ignorance on the question of turning on Trump. But no, I think it's quite clear that Mitch McConnell has already made up his mind that he's done with Trump. He has no use for him. The guy, obviously, Donald Trump is getting played here big time by Mitch McConnell, who's going to go down as history books will be written about Mitch McConnell. I think he's wielded power probably like no politician at the national level of since I've been following politics. So this guy manages again to get his way, and now the only thing that's standing in his way is the Donald Trump obviously already played for Trump. He's just waiting on the Senate to override his veto to the defense spending bill, which Trump is correct in objecting to, but obviously for all the wrong reasons. So the only thing that's holding McConnell back now is Bernie's wielding power for real by threatening to to drag this out as long as possible, even into the end of the congressional term, which I believe could potentially lead to a federal government shutdown, given that the term is set to end, I believe, next week on Sunday. Or it'll come up for a vote, because Bernie can't actually stop the vote, but he's trying by denying unanimous consent to drag it out for as long as possible. Unanimous consent, again, the expeditory process where a single vote can blow it up. Any congressman, the dissent from any member can basically delays the bill. And so I'm not certain that Bernie. I'm not certain that Bernie can prevent the defense bill from coming up for a vote. He's even indicating himself that he does intend on voting for the override as long as the $2,000 thing. So let's see if the $2,000 thing comes up for a vote. I believe there are procedural mechanisms that would allow the Democrats to be able to attempt to separate out the bad stuff, the toxic stuff, the Section 230 repeal and the investigatory committees from the $2,000 standalone bill. Obviously, what you'd want is a $2,000 standalone bill if you're a Democratic politician operating in good faith. So I don't know why they wouldn't just wield power for once rather than always getting had by Mitch McConnell. The way Joe Biden is getting obviously poised to be had by Mitch McConnell for the next 4 years if if the Republicans maintain their majority in the Senate and he remains the leader. And the way Mitch McConnell has always wielded power. So we'll have to see. But I think my biggest takeaways from this are that Trump is obviously still clueless, even after 4 years, as to how government works. Still doesn't know much about presidenting. And Mitch McConnell here single-handedly torpedoing the hopes of working Americans. I don't know if anyone hates. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone demonstrate as much contempt for doing their job as Mitch McConnell as Senate Majority Leader.